Georgia, what
Mm.
happened? What's going on with Georgia? Georgia has what, 90 goals against now?
Yeah, 3 straight losses. Now, I'll tell you one thing that happened to Georgia is they hit the hardest part of their schedule, which happens to teams, right? I mean, you get runs, and if you just kind of sit back and say, "Oh my goodness, they've lost," this team's won a bunch of games, or this team's lost a bunch of games in a row, whatever. You have to look at the circumstances. I mean, Georgia opened up with Colorado, the bad loss in Vancouver, where they just did not play well, but then Colorado again. They had a Panther City game. So they've played a bunch of Western teams, teams from the old Western Conference. And other than San Diego, teams from the West have only won a couple of games this season against Eastern teams, former Eastern teams. So, now they beat Buffalo. Georgia beat Buffalo, which was huge. But then you run into this Albany, Toronto, and the vastly improving New York Riptide. And I'm going to give you credit. Last week, you said your dark horse pick is New York making the playoffs. And I thought, might be a bit of a stretch at this point. They're going to be in the hunt for it, but boy, they look good and they're right in the mix. So, but yeah, they've just run into a bunch of tough games and happened to lose some of them. Now, the fact that they've lost by 4, then 3 is a little concerning, I think. And the fact that they're not scoring the way you would think they would be with Lyle Thompson, Andrew Hugh, and Shane Jackson and others is a bit concerning, but I think they're going to be okay. They're going to turn it around. The thing though for Georgia, I had them as very likely going into the season, very likely to be hosting a playoff game, finishing top 4 in the league, and sitting at 4-4 now. That's they need to be careful that if they're going to do that. Now, again, be careful. They're trying every game. They're trying to do it, but I think they're in a situation where they still have a chance to host a playoff game, which is pretty huge. Finishing top 4, it's going to be tough. I mean, it was going to be tough going into the season. There's a lot of good teams.
Especially after last year's start, though. What was it?
Yeah,
0-7 at the beginning, and that
yeah.
was but there, and kudos to that. The Georgia group. They kept
Mm-hmm.
Como, and now you're starting to see. It's such a. I would definitely not want to own any one of these teams. That's a terrible, stressful job. It's so much more fun to just go watch it, and I mean, yeah, it would be fun, but I would not have the patience. As soon as we started losing, I'd be like, all right, you guys all suck. Let's go next group.
I feel like I like to think that I would wait it out and have some patience, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
definitely not my strong suit. I think that Georgia Vancouver game this weekend though is going to be huge because like we just talked about, Vancouver, they're trying to make a statement for the year. Guys are playing for jobs, and after Molosky's call out, I think it's going to be a big game for them. And Georgia losing 3 games in a row is what I think makes it a big game for Georgia.
Oh yeah. Yeah, 4 in a row is you start to question yourselves. It's hard not to, right? And I think Eddie Camo is a great coach and just a very calming presence to have around, and I think he'll be fine. And that makes them fine as well because he's just such a great leader. But yeah, I mean, you want to. I don't think coming into the season that they were thinking, hey, let's just make the playoffs when they were so close last year after that horrible start, and then Brett Dobson just came on like gangbusters, and the team played really well, and had a great run down the stretch. Just a couple of losses late that had them miss the postseason, but I don't think they were saying, well, let's take it a little bit further and sneak into the playoffs. I think they were thinking themselves like, hey, let's go and be a top team in this league. I think they feel like they're ready for that, and they may be. I think again, relying on a young goaltender is a bit of a risky proposition. We've got a handful of teams because there's such a shortage of starting caliber goaltending, like established starting caliber goaltending in the NLL, that you've got teams doing it. San Diego, Chris Origlieri is looking great. And that's one that I thought, oh, you're going to go with Origlieri now when he's 21. He just turned 21. That's faith, but he's been looking really good again.
Yeah, he
5,
looked great
6
against
games
the
in.
Firewolves. I mean,
Yeah,
he
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 really
looked
did.
he looked phenomenal against the Firewolves, and honestly, I think
Yeah.
Dobson um, played a lot better at the beginning of the year than I was giving him credit for. I didn't think Dobson. I think he played, a little bit above his capacity in a couple of those games. The more of these games I watch, though, the more I notice it really comes down to like 4 or 5 saves.
Yeah.
Is your goalie gonna? Every goalie's gonna let in, 2, maybe 3 that they want back. But which goalie is going to make that 4 or 5 big saves that you shouldn't make,
Mm-hmm.
or that
Yeah.
you
And
don't
he's been
ask
great.
them to make?
You look at how much rides on Dobson for Georgia, and they've been kind of playing a little musical backups. They had Craig Wendy, he's gone. They had Dustin Hill for a while, he's gone. They've got Angus Goodleaf in, who, I mean, great to see Gussie back in the league after. I mean, I saw his heart stop on the floor in the President's Cup right? I mean, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
And he had to be taken off on a stretcher to the hospital. He's back, and he's been playing very well as a backup. He's always been such a good backup in this league, and he's come in and played very well for them in a couple of games. You look at New York with Cam Dunkerley. Like, can you ride Cam Dunkerley to the playoffs?